Welcome to another edition of From Beyond Champaign. I'm Cody. You can follow me on all socials at Cody_CHGO. I'm joined once again by my other good friend, Sonny Verma from Locked On Illini. And we are here to talk about Illinois being absolutely back. We're just going full deep in. Illinois is back at 2 straight wins. I'll dial it back a little bit, obviously. Illinois beat Michigan 93-73 yesterday. And there's so much to discuss in the present, so much to talk about what's ahead here as March has begun. But overall, Sonny, man, all I can say is like when you first jumped into this little thing here on StreamYard, is the app we're using here. The first thing I said to you was, a lot has changed since the Duke game, man. Like, I can't believe that I'm sitting here kind of optimistic about Illinois right now.
You know, it harkens me back to the conversation you and I had on this show when we were just previewing the season. Yeah. And I remember saying, I really think because of this brand new roster and replacing, 9-10 guys, that we're going to have a roller coaster of years. The highs are going to be high and those lows are going to be lows. And Cody, oh my gosh, those highs have been high and those lows have been low. Like you said, even on Locked On Illini, I think last week after that Duke game, the title of my show was, "Is this team broken?" And here I am a week later and asking myself, does Illinois have the highest ceiling in the Big Ten when it comes to March Madness?
Here we go. Oh, you just know at this point, because all of us as in Illini creators have been saying it all season. Illinois has the highest ceiling of anyone in the Big Ten. Like, I've heard too many people who slander us, like, use it to like make fun of us at this point. And it took 2 games, and here we are. We're saying it again.
I'm back.
Saying it again. So before we get too far deep in, I see a few people in our chat, Fighting Illini 23 and Jason Long. Welcome, everyone. Let us know how you're feeling about this Illini win. We got Purdue on Friday, so a while to celebrate and focus ahead. But hit that like button on YouTube for me. Hit that subscribe button if you've never been here. If you've been here, you've probably seen Sonny's face before. He's growing such a great YouTube channel over at Locked On Illini. It's been very fun to watch him grow in the space over the last couple years. Yes, he's also a huge Cubs fan, so that's why we're friends too. So anyway, do all that stuff. The links for Apple and Spotify for the audio version are also in the description. I forgot to put the Discord link to the Locked On Illini, the Discord in the chat. I'm in that Discord too. It's a great Discord, but maybe Sonny can drop it in.
Jason Long, I see you in the chat. Jason's in the Discord. Jason, if you can drop that link, otherwise I'll find it.
Someone put that Discord link in the live chat, because I'm sure a lot of the people listening are from the Discord. So maybe if some new people come in here, maybe they can join. Anyway, so I'm just going to share my overall thoughts to start here. I posted a short or a TikTok, whatever you want to call it, yesterday after the win. And I'm still doing everything to hold myself back from getting too excited. But at the end of the video, I said, at the end of the day, though, it's still really encouraging to see what happened, because you're seeing some adjustments from this coaching staff. They made a defensive adjustment against Iowa, and we thought, well, it's Iowa. They stink. So does it mean much? Well, they did it against Michigan, and I felt like the reason Illinois won this game was their work on the glass and just their defense. They didn't even have Morez Johnson out there, and I feel like you can make the argument that he is a top 3 defender on the team, or at least a presence on defense that's made a huge impact. And I felt like defensively, Sonny, like that was the story. I mean, they shot 32% in the first half, and despite the fact that they couldn't make a shot in the first half, they still led at halftime. It was 1 point, but you felt like they should have been up by double digits. I remember sending the tweet. And then whenever they were up by 20 in the second half, I went back to that tweet and I replied to it in the thread and said, I feel really justified right now, because they were starting to hit shots. So I feel like some defensive adjustments have been made. And sure, all the stuff about sickness and injuries and Tommy not being in practice, I always thought that there was a little bit of truth to it. Should Brad had been using that as an excuse as much as he had? I think you can make an argument that he shouldn't have, but I think when you're a coach and you believe in a team like I think Brad believes in this team, you just stick to your guns. And I think Brad deserves a lot of credit for kind of shifting this. They lost by 43 to Duke 9 days ago. Yeah. And here we are. They've won 2 in a row. They go to Michigan, win by 20. And now you can end the regular season on a 3-game winning streak. We'll see what happens with Purdue at home, but I feel like there's reasonable optimism. And then if you can win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, like, great, awesome. I feel like they, after beating Iowa, they for sure, we're getting another NCAA tournament, but I feel like they're starting to kind of shift a little bit into the form back to January, beginning of January. And I think it's largely because of the defense. That's me, though.
And credit to Brad. Like you said, apparently they really had a serious conversation after that Duke debacle. And I have no other words to say than calling it a debacle, at least at our PG. But it's also a simple matter of, I think Brad just kind of wisened up. I'm a big pro Brad Underwood guy, but the strategy now is, Morez went down, and all of a sudden, a guy who was in the doghouse, Trey White, is starting to get minutes. And would Trey White have been gotten his minutes had Morez not gone down? I don't know. But, playing Trey White minutes and limiting Ben Hummerkaus's minutes have been things that we've been talking about all season long. And, there was a little bit of stubbornness on Brad's part. But I'm glad he figured it out eventually. But, there's also a lot of truth to the fact that, and these are not excuses. I say this on Locked On Illini all the time. Like, I'm not making excuses for the poor January and a February that they had. But it is also facts that this team only practiced maybe 3-4 times the entire month of January together. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the defense just kind of fell off since the calendar turned in 2025. Offense is one thing. Everyone's been playing offense their entire lives growing up when you play basketball. But defense, especially when you play team defense, a lot of that relies on coordination, relies on timing. And when you're not practicing with the same guys each and every day, and your opponents are, well, then, of course, you can have a step back. They had a really step back. I think they were in the plus 200s at one point in 2025. But they're playing together again. They're being healthy again. I don't know if you recall this, but in my Iowa preview show, I woke up that morning and decided, you know what? I'm changing my mindset. What's going to happen is if Illinois blows out Iowa, they get a little confidence. The team is healthy. Nobody's talking about Illinois anymore. They can go into Ann Arbor. They can win at Ann Arbor. And who knows, Purdue, we'll see what Purdue's struggling. And it was that night. I actually joined your TikTok. And by the way, if you can't sleep at night, Cody will keep you company almost every single night. I'm there pretty much every evening at this point. And I said to you that night, I left a comment. I'm like, Cody, big Iowa win tomorrow and Illinois sweeps the rest of the season. What do you think? And you're like, hey, sure, let's go for it. I'm not as optimistic as you, but having 20-plus point victories against Iowa, a 20-plus point victory against Michigan, who was competing for a Big Ten championship, at Ann Arbor. And Philip, who was in the chat earlier, brought it to my attention. Illinois has had 6 conference wins with 20-plus points. The signs are there. And I'm not necessarily 100% all in, but I'm very, very, very in.
I think if they beat Purdue at home on Friday, I might be all the way in. Just because Purdue has been so it's almost like Maryland, except the difference is that Purdue is a really elite program. When we lose to Maryland over the years, you're always like, how do we lose to Maryland? We're better than them. But Purdue, the point is that Purdue has just kind of had their hand over us for the last handful of years. Now there's no Zach Edey on their roster. And if you go look at those games they played against Purdue with Zach Edey, Illinois was always in those games. They would just always brutally break you at the end, though, right? I feel like they have a shot against this Purdue team. And one reason why is because Kylan Boswell might be one of the best on-ball defenders in all of college basketball. Kylan Boswell, I've been doing a lot of like putting my hands up and shrugging a lot with him this year because I've been expecting more, especially from his 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
But he does so many other good things that like he's not so bad to where it's like you got to get this guy off the court and play someone else more. There were a few games where, especially when Dre Gibbs Lawhorn was playing well, where it's like, why are we not playing him more than Kylan? Right. But I think overall, Kylan has been a good player for Illinois this year. It's been good, but I can't lie and say that it's been great. And I can definitely say that I've been wanting more. And largely from the 3-point shot, because if he was more like he was at Arizona, then maybe Illinois has a few more wins. I don't know, but I'll say this though, like he's a great on-ball defender. I think he's a great facilitator. He rebounds the ball for a guard. And his last 2 games after Brad called him out after the Duke loss, he's played his 2 best games of the year. And so now, if you get Kylan playing like he has these last 2 games, and he plays like that again against Purdue, like I feel pretty good about him going into March or going into the NCAA tournament or the Big Ten tournament, which is crazy because I think Arizona fans view him as someone who doesn't show up for the big time moment or the big time games late in the year. So if he can shift that narrative a little bit, that'd be awesome. And it would be a huge thing for this team. Like he's been fine all year, but he's had his 2 best games of the year, the last 2, undoubtedly, in my opinion, his 2 best games. He was guarding Danny Wolf
right
at Michigan. And like, I think there was a lot more to do with Danny Wolf and why he was so bad in that game, but Kylan sure as hell didn't make it easier on him. And then the game before that, Dix and Sanford didn't do anything. And they're great shooters, I just feel like even in the Duke game, as bad as it was, it's not like Cooper Flagg destroyed you.
He held his own against Cooper Flagg,
right?
A potential generational NBA player,
right?
And let's not forget Mark Sears earlier in the season took himself out because he got nothing done against Kylan. I agree with you. To me, it's like when Kylan Boswell is good, Illinois is good because. As talented as he is, he does have some boneheaded plays, and he had some in just the first half of the game against Michigan, but he was attacking the basket. And because of his size, right? He's like 6'3", almost 200 pounds. He's built like a linebacker. At the college level, there's just not many point guards in the country, much less the league, that can guard him. And so when he makes the right play, he's a guy who should be able to will you to 13, 14 points by himself. The 3-point shooting is a mystery, right? Like you said, he was shooting, I think, 40% from 3 points last year. And this year at one point, it was like 23, 24%. And, you hope that the law of averages is going to kind of even that up a little bit. There's not many games left for it to happen, but just defensively, I think over the offseason, Brad Underwood told him that that's what he wanted Kylan's role to be here, be the defensive stopper. And I think Kylan talked about it in the post game. Maybe it was after Michigan or maybe it was after Iowa. Someone in the comments can let me know. Like he talked about how spoke to Terrence Shannon Jr. And Terrence was like, no matter what, always try to lock down on defense, and then the rest of the game will take care of itself. And so Kylan has had that mindset. And again, we're talking about a guy who really disrupted Michigan and a 7-foot, arguably all Big Ten star in Danny Wolf. And in the very next game on Friday, we're going to be asking him to take on 5'9" point guard Braden Smith, who's also, a potential All-American. And there's just not many players in the entire country that have that kind of versatility to guard that big of a spectrum.
Yeah. No, he's just, He's just found a way to still be a productive player despite the 3-point shot being terrible. I mean, he still went 1 for 5 from 3 at Michigan, and I'm still feel like he had his best game of the year. 17 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. The 1 block he had coming from behind, I think it might have been Danny Wolf, or maybe it was Vlad Golden. I don't remember. It's just it was some much bigger guy than him, but he came from behind, and Benham Rickhouse was doing his best in that moment. And yeah, he just he's a great on-ball defender, but he's also coming over for help. He just does all these little things that doesn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet, I guess you could say. But I think for me, this is the kind of Kylan Boswell they need if they're going to make any noise the rest of this month, if they're going to salvage anything that's left from the season. I think at this point, getting to the Sweet 16 would be a surprise for a lot of fans, despite the last 2 games. I think a lot of fans would be surprised if they got to the Sweet 16. And I think that even if they beat Purdue on Friday, I think fans would still be surprised if they got to a Sweet 16. But me and you both know, as we sit here, as we've said all year, I have not taken my flag out of this spot on the hill. I still feel like you said at the top show, like they have the highest ceiling of anyone in this conference. I don't care how many more games Michigan State wins. I don't care that they beat Wisconsin without Max Klesmint. I don't care. I really don't. And those fans can yell and scream at me all they want. Just the eye test alone tells me that when Illinois is playing their best, or if they're doing 2 of the 3 things that they need to do to win, which is limit turnovers and rebound the basketball and, I don't know, shoot 30% from 3. If they do 2 of those 3 things, they have a really good chance to win and beat anyone. Maybe not Duke, but mostly anyone,
Basketball is a simple game. It's the one sport where there's just 5 guys against your 5 guys. And Illinois, more often than not, when you just talk about complete teams, and again, I'm using the air quotes, a healthy team. Illinois has guards. They've got Kylan Boswell, Kasper Shakushonis. Illinois has wings. They have Will Riley. They have Trey White. And Illinois has bigs. They have Tomislav Ivicic and hopefully Morez Johnson Jr. There's not a lot of teams in the country that can go 1 through 6 or 7 like Illinois can. Mm-hmm. And so, it's one of those where Wisconsin is kind of the trendy pick right now, but Wisconsin is an insanely good offensive team. But I've seen them, if they have one bad offensive game, their defense is not going to hold them, they're not going to keep them up. And so their floor is really low if Wisconsin has a bad offensive game. Illinois doesn't have that problem. Well, they have, but Illinois seemingly has made some adjustments as of late. They're not switching on defense as much as they used to. They're essentially just keeping your best guy against their best guy. And, it's been working. Michigan is a really good defensive team, and they're a really good offensive team. Michigan is built to beat Illinois. With those 2 bigs that they have, that's supposed to be the one we couldn't overcome it against Maryland. And Maryland's a very good basketball team. But Michigan is the top team in the Big Ten Conference. And they've got 2 bigs that are arguably all Big Ten. And quite honestly, Brad Underwood outcoached Dusty May that game. And all of a sudden, just throwing little Kylan over at Danny Wolf just got them all flustered to the point where they didn't know what to do. And you know what? Brad said, and I was kind of hoping, my everydayers at Locked On Illini will know I said this. I know Michigan's built to beat Illinois, but what I want Illinois to do is not play Michigan's game, but force Michigan to play Illinois' game. And that's exactly what they did. All of a sudden, 5 out. I think Tommy only played like 18, 20 minutes. Illinois played 5 out. Golden had no choice but to guard the 3-point line. And he's an average defender near the rim. He's not going to do anything for you on the perimeter. And at that point, you had Kasperis, you had Will Riley, you had Trey White, and Kylan Boswell all attacking the rim because there's no size down low. And Michigan's greatest advantage was completely negated. And so again, hat tip to Brad. Like he outcoached what many people would consider one of the stronger candidates for the Big Ten Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I would agree. I also love how Illinois attacked the zone when they went to zone. And you mentioned Tommy. I felt like he showed his best moments of the game whenever Michigan tried to go to zone. Whether it was, obviously he didn't do much scoring, only had 7 points, but I felt the way he distributed the ball. He had a couple nice passes on the cutter at the bat from the guy who comes in from the 3-point line. I forget the name. You know who I'm talking about? I feel like say that
Trey Downson, Namari Burnett.
No, I'm talking more about like attacking the zone. When they got the ball into Tommy in the middle, the guy who cuts at the bottom of the 3-point line to the basket.
Sure.
There's a term for that, and I'm blanking on the term for that. And someone in the chat is probably rolling their eyes, and they're probably going to type it and let us know. But anyway, I just felt like he had his moments in this game. And when I looked at the box score and saw that he had 7 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds, I was kind of like, wow, I felt like he played so much better than that. But yeah, like because of how Michigan had to play and they couldn't rebound a thing, it's like, wow, everyone just had a great game. It felt like, so, another guy that I'm really, I guess, happy for. And this isn't to try and go towards bring back old things, but it makes you wonder at the same time. But like Trey White with his 19 and 11, like this was probably I would say that game he had against Wisconsin in December was better, but this is probably his second or third best game at least. And I don't think we're going to get 19 and 11 out of Trey White against Purdue or anyone else the rest of the season, but you can see what Trey White can do, and you can see the kind of impact he can make on the floor, whether it's defensively or in transition. Hell, he hit 3 threes. Like the guy, like people were questioning if this guy could shoot the 3 for half the season.
Yeah.
If he plays anything close like this, I said this in December when they were playing well, because he had such a great game against Wisconsin. And then he had and that was coming off a bad game against Northwestern. And I felt like he followed that game up against Wisconsin with more really solid games, scoring double digits, rebounding the basketball. On one hand, it makes you wonder how the hell did this guy get some DMPs? And on the other hand, it's like, man, like if they get anything close to this or even half of this, it changes everything for Illinois, because you know what you're going to need out of the 3 guys in Kasparis, Tommy, and Will Riley. But Trey White, Kylan Boswell, those are the other 2 that I don't want to say they're X factors, but they are certainly important to this team potentially blowing teams out. If they both have great games like they did against Michigan, they could do that. If they do that against other teams, they're probably going to be blowing a team out. And so to see the development of him over this season and how it's been very rocky, it makes you scratch your head into like how we had to go through the rocky part, because I'm not there. I don't know what led to him getting DMPs outside of the fact that he was sick at times.
Right.
But all I know is that if this is him sort of emerging again like he did in December, it's a huge development, because there were games there where I felt like he ain't getting it done, and I don't know what he's doing or why he deserves to play at the same time. So in many ways, I understood it, but I also was like, well, no one else is playing well. Why is Trey White getting DMPs and we're going 6 deep against whoever the heck we lost to? Like, you know what game I'm talking about. I can't remember who it was they lost to. I want to say maybe that was the Michigan State game.
Yeah, he did play against Michigan State. And I was going to bring that up too, because it drives me crazy that he didn't play against Michigan State. Again, the folks who watch my show know I talked about Trey White for like 2 weeks straight now. For me, I know he doesn't shoot the 3-pointer all that well, but he's 5 for 8 in his last 2 games at this point. You don't really necessarily need him for his 3-point shooting. What I like about Trey White is he's kind of like a C+, a B- version of Terrence Shannon Jr. in the sense where you don't have to run a single play for him. He just gets his baskets through transition. He attacks the rim, and unlike, Will Riley or Kasparis, the referees do give him the foul calls, and he does get to shoot free throws. And he's, one of our better free throw shooters on this basketball team. And I just think that when you think about all the roles that different players have on this team, I don't know if there's anyone that does those little things like Trey does. And so for me, one of the biggest disagreements I've had with some of the decisions Brad made this season is just all of a sudden overnight just stop playing Trey White. Because again, for me, it's like, I know we talked about in the offseason how talented this team is. Well, spoiler alert, it's not as talented as we thought it was going to be. And so for me, Trey White is a plus player, and you want your plus players playing it basketball, because you see, again, Michigan's a very good basketball team. He hung 19 and 11 against them. It's because of Trey White and Kylan Boswell that you were able to have a ho-hum Kasparis game against Michigan. And I thought for sure that you needed a huge Kasparis game to have any sort of chance of beating the Wolverines. But it turns out you didn't, because the veterans on the team, and that was the topic of Monday's episode, actually, was, Trey White, Kylan Boswell, Ben Hummerkaus, the older guys on the basketball team stepped up. And, we know the freshmen are fantastic on this basketball team, whether it's Kasparis, Will, Tommy, Morez Johnson. We know those guys are super talented, but it's the older guys, the transfer guys that, in my opinion, have been kind of responsible for a lot of the downs of this season. But if you take a look at the box scores of the last two games, Iowa and Michigan, all three of them have had really good games. And there's a reason that Illinois has won by 20 plus points both times.
Yeah. No, I'm just, again, holding back all my excitement, but I like to see our YouTube chat a little bit more positive, because I was getting to a point where I was so tired of talking about Brad's post-game comments. I brought this up on one particular show. I think it might have been Wisconsin, after Wisconsin, or who'd they play after? Was Duke after Wisconsin? It might have been after the Duke loss, where I just went on a little bit of a tangent about how, Brad's going to say whatever Brad's going to say, but he's never going to fully reveal what he's thinking or what he's planning to do. And you just have to live with that. And I used covering the Cubs as a reason to explain that, because Craig Counsell and David Ross say the same thing after every loss and the same thing after every win. So you can only take so much of what these coaches and people are saying. That said, it got very annoying listening to Brad talk about injuries and sickness, and the fact that at Wisconsin we're not shaking hands because of this being such an all-time flu season or something. It just got to a point where, as a fan, it's hard to sit there and listen to all that, especially when it felt like nothing changed. So I think I still think my biggest criticism of Brad at this point in the season is, I still feel like you could have made some of these adjustments earlier. But to your point, 3 practices or something like that in January, I guess I get it in some aspects, man. If this isn't just one of those years where everyone's getting sick, and to be fair, at Wisconsin, Tommy didn't even travel with the team, had to drive up. Imagine being from where he's from and having to drive to Madison, Wisconsin. Sounds terrible. And then, Jake Davis throwing up before the game and playing a total of a couple minutes and then, being done. I guess I get it in that aspect. It's been a rocky ride, man. And now this narrative of everyone getting healthy and all that, for Brad's sake, I hope that is the thing, because this was before the Iowa game, it felt like this was the first time where you could make the argument that Brad was getting really stubborn. And he was someone who was, how do I say it? Someone who was celebrated for adapting and making changes and stuff. And he just wasn't. They were doing the same thing every night, it felt like. I felt like maybe in February they started trying to go to the basket a little bit more instead of jacking up 43s. But other than that, you still felt like they're doing the same shit. These last 2 games, The only thing that's really changed, I feel like, in terms of how they're playing is their defense. I still feel like they're jacking up a ton of threes.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't necessarily think they've changed much on offense, man. I just think that they're defending and they're rebounding. And I mean, that's fine. Like, you can't change the offense at this point in the season. So again, I hope Brad was right about that. It's two wins, one against a bad Iowa team and one against a top 20 Michigan team, at least by AP poll. But I think me and you can confidently sit here and say that maybe they're a little overrated based off a lot of their wins being by less than 1 or 2 possessions, right? I think if they go and beat Purdue at home on Friday to close out the season, like, Illinois is for sure going to be one of those sexy, like, for
sure. Yeah.
They can upset a 1 seed and like if somehow if they end up getting like an 8 or a 9 seed or something. Like, I don't think if they beat Purdue, they're not going to get an 8 or a 9 seed, but like I could see them being like one of those sexy like 6 or 7 seeds to go all the way. You know, like people will be eating that up, and like the creators, the content people. I can see it now, and while that's cool, it also scares the shit out of me because I don't like it when people are on Illinois. I like it when people are against Illinois.
Every time that's happened this year, we go through a slump shortly thereafter. Every time John Rothstein says something or John Fanta says something positive about Illinois, or here come the Illini, they're in the tier 2, right, below the Dukes and Auburns, we just throw up a stinker. And so that's actually why after that Duke game, the 43-point loss, that's why right before the Iowa game on my preview show, I was like, you know what? Nobody's talking about Illinois anymore. Like, all they're talking about is how this team is in a disarray, how the team is broken, hand up, me included. I called them broken on my own show. And so maybe that's just where this team thrives, when the expectations are gone, when the spotlight is off. So, yeah, I mean, that is kind of one of the downsides of, if Illinois does beat Purdue, because you're already hearing whispers now. Is Illinois back? You and I are different. We're Illini content creators, but the national guys are saying that. And when the national guys are saying that, then, that's when, again, just bad voodoo happens to this Illinois basketball team. But you're right. Right now, I think like the floor is probably an 8-9 seed with the way Illinois has been playing. But if they beat Purdue, they have a win or two in the Big Ten tournament. You can play up to, I'd assume, maybe like a 6 seed. I'm having a bracketologist on sometime this week, and I'll ask him these questions. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm not looking forward to, because if Illinois does go on a little hot streak, I almost wish, and this is very selfish of me, that we beat Purdue, because I'd never want to lose to Purdue.
Right.
But I wouldn't mind losing early in the Big Ten tournament because of what we just discussed.
Yeah.
Like I want that one stinker where people jump off that bandwagon, because all of a sudden, if Illinois beats Iowa, Michigan, Purdue, wins their first 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, all the national narrative is going to be like, here comes that Illinois team. We've been talking about them this whole time. They have the potential to win it all. And then that's when we get into trouble.
The only way that I would go against you on that is if we get a potential matchup against Michigan State a third time.
Yeah, fair.
I'm a real sick piece of work, Sonny. Like, I'm not someone who cheers against Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament, but this year might be one, because I think I'll be cheering against Michigan State more than I ever did Purdue with Zach Edey. Like, that's how much Michigan State fans have annoyed me this year.
Cody, take a look at the comment sections of all my videos almost every day. And there's always at least one Michigan State fan, for no reason, I'm not even remotely referencing them, but who has to just come in and comment about Illinois and the program and this and that. So I'm not going to say I'm rooting against them, but I'm not going to be sad at all if they have an early exit, just because, granted, they've got the best team in the Big Ten Conference. You've proven it. Okay, good for you. You're going to win the Big Ten Conference because you played the most consistently. But my gosh, if you listen to their fans, like, they think Tom Izzo is the Tom Izzo, when it was Kent from the Casual Big Ten Twitter account who showed that Tom Izzo, I believe, has the 5th most wins in the Big Ten Conference over the last 5 or 6 years. and yet they're talking about as if they've won the conference the last 5-6 years. And so I'm with you there. I'm 100% with you there. I'm not going to be rooting against Michigan State, but I'm not going to say I'm not going to smile a little bit if Michigan State has an early exit.
I feel like there has to be some form of because the first game against Michigan State, we all know I don't care what anyone says. The refs screwed Illinois in that game outside of them missing free throws and shooting whatever they did from three. If Kasparis plays more than 9 minutes with the way the rest of that team played, I'll take Illinois in that game every single time. Now, in the second game, you got what happened with Terrence Shannon and the whole the banner upside down that just creates a negative vibe in the entire arena, and Brad only playing 6 deep and not scoring the last 8 minutes. I think Michigan State earned that one. Absolutely. But it was still an embarrassing loss. And that's why I said I'm a real sicko for it, Sonny. I'm a real sicko for a third try. Give me one more shot. Give me one more shot against that team that makes no sense to me. They make no sense on how they're good. I do not get it. And it pains me to have to say that they're good because of Tom Izzo. Not that I hate Tom Izzo. It's just he hasn't been good over the last handful of years. And now he has a team that has Jason Richardson's kid on it and a bunch of nobody else's. Okay, what? And then he pushes his whole thing. Oh, they love Michigan State and they've been here. I just shut up. We know that you hate the transfer portal, Tom. Yeah. We know. Okay. And when he does that, it pushes against all the other teams in college basketball that are trying to adapt with how things are now. You think Brad wants to go to the transfer portal every year and do what he's got to do? No, I think based off what he said about Tom Izzo himself, he would like to do things the same way Tom Izzo has done throughout his entire career. But instead, he has to adapt. You know what I mean? We're doing a whole lot of rambling, or I am at this point, but
it's the same. It's just one of the, I think you'll agree with me when I say this is, again, I called Michigan State the best team in the Big Ten this year. Congratulations. You've proven it on the court. But this Michigan State team would not have finished in the top 3 or 4 of the Big Ten the last couple of years. Those Purdue teams, the Illini teams from the last couple of years were clearly a step above, in my opinion, to this Michigan State team. The Big Ten in general is kind of down this year. I mean, a lot of the teams are led by freshmen. When you look at this freshman class of this conference, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about Illinois with Kasparis and Will Riley, but you're talking about the 2 Rutgers guys. You're talking about Derek Queen in Maryland. Just a lot of really good young talent. But because of that, they're not the sophomores, juniors that usually really catapult teams to national contender status like the previous couple of years. And so, credit to Michigan State, but I'm tired of hearing about them.
Credit to them, but also fuck them. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. All right, man. Well, you gave me 40 minutes. We're about there. So we kind of talked a lot about the Michigan game, gone over just the roller coaster ride of this season to this point, like we always do. How do you feel about Purdue on Friday? You gonna reveal early? I know you always make your pick at the end of the week. I feel like we both should just say Purdue's going to win. That way we can say we were wrong but be happy.
Right? Yeah. None of us would be upset if we were wrong about that. For me, honestly, I'm just one of those where because before the Iowa game, and everyone was as down as we've ever been on the Illini, I just decided to come on the show and your live TikTok and said, you know what, Illinois, big victory against Iowa. Everything turns around. The team is healthy. We go 3-0, sweep the rest of the season. So
yeah,
Purdue's in shambles right now too, right? I know they just beat a UCLA team, but they've lost 4 out of their last 5. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm confident about this game because we've struggled against Purdue. And Purdue does have the one head coach who unequivocally is better than ours. And, it's one of those where, and they got Braden Smith who, again, I can't wait to see what Kylan does against him, but he's had our number the last couple of years, and he's still he himself can will a team to win. But they may have those 2 All-Americans, but they don't have much beyond that. And that's kind of what I look at as the difference. Illinois, especially if Trey Kylan, Ben, Jake Davis play the way that they have the last couple games, I think Illinois can come out on top, especially with it being at home on senior day.
Yeah. Do we have any seniors? Is there any seniors on this team? Is Ben a senior?
But he can technically come back now with that whole Diego Pavia rule.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think.
All right. Ben Rickhouse game. Here we go. Let's go,
I'm
man.
here for it.
Is AJ Red a senior? Like, well, can we play so well that AJ Red gets to come in the game? Right?
Yeah,
That's what I'm asking for, right? Philip knows. He's in the chat. He says Illinois 85, Purdue 60. DGL gets 20. That dude, the DGL game against Purdue. Oh, I might be insufferable.
That's true. Yeah, against Purdue and all that extra story behind it. Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll just say this. Kylan versus Braden Smith will be interesting, but I do think whichever one of these that gets in foul trouble, that team will probably lose. And I think that is between Tommy and TKR. TKR I've watched Purdue enough. Sometimes he can get in foul trouble, and it gets Purdue into a mess, especially over the last 5 games that they have played. So if Illinois can get him into foul trouble, as in TKR, into early foul trouble, they can certainly take advantage with him off the court, because you are right. It is Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, and then I don't feel scared against this Purdue team like I have in the last handful of years. And again, the last 2 years of those Purdue teams, probably the 2 best Purdue teams I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And we can make jokes about how the first one lost to a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament, but they came back and got all the way to the national title last year. And listen, as the team that I love the most in Illinois basketball history didn't even win the national title. They got to the national title game, though. Yeah. So I can't do too much talking. That UConn team beat us by 1,000 points that day. So to me, that those Purdue teams were all time. And, you know, I feel like there's a shot here for Illinois to win. And I think they at least got their mojo back. I think they got some confidence. Confidence is a big thing in sports, man. Like these guys, like Kylan Boswell is playing with so much confidence right now. Trey White playing with confidence. And Kasparis, like, he didn't even, like, you look at his stat line yesterday and you're like, he did that? I felt like he was nothing yesterday, you know? So we talk about Kylan, we can talk about Braden, that matchup, but is Braden going to be able to guard Kasparis? You know, I don't know. Not many people can. And hopefully the 3-point shots continues to fall a little bit. Hopefully the bank is open a couple times for him too, you know, but I think as good as Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer are, I think Illinois' guards are better as a whole, and they have more depth there. And then when it comes to the bigs, I mean, Tommy and TKR, but can they guard Will Riley in the size that he has? Not many other teams have shown to be able to do that. And who knows? Maybe DGL does show up after a pretty quiet couple games. He's been pretty quiet the last couple games. Now he gets to go up against a team that he was committed to at one point. And, you know, we know how much Purdue fans hate him. So I'm looking forward to a big DGL game on Friday.
That would make my night. A big DGL game against Purdue. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played as much, but quite honestly, like I was a big proponent of playing DGL more minutes.
Yeah.
But the way Kylan's been playing the last couple of days or last couple of games, it's like you can't sit him at this point. And so, you know, we'll see. It's Purdue, it's Illinois, you know, the 2 standards in the Big Ten Conference over the last, 6 years or so. Yeah. And if nothing else, there's one stat that bothers every single Purdue fan, no matter what show I come on. So I love to bring it up. And that's, you know, the stat about Brad Underwood having the most wins in the Big Ten Conference, I believe, over the last 6 years. Mm-hmm. And so right now they're both tied at 80. And so Friday, if Brad Underwood beats Purdue, then that's one more offseason that I can go on these national shows where they'll have another Purdue correspondent and I can bring up this stat because, again, it drives them absolutely crazy. And whatever drives them absolutely crazy brings a smile to my face.
Hell yeah. And then I can give Braggs a crap about it for an entire summer. Yeah,
that's what it's all about sometimes.
I actually hadn't counted up like where we're at. To be honest, I'm surprised that we still are at least number one or tied for number one based off the season we've had. But that's just more praise to Brad Underwood, and the show would go another 5 minutes if I went into that.
For sure.
So, all right, man. Well, we'll see what happens on Friday. I am optimistic, but I appreciate you for coming on and talking a little ball, and I'm wishing you, as always, more success. For everyone here, if you're not watching Locked On Illini, make sure you go subscribe to that YouTube channel. It's a great all Illinois show. I just talk hoops. Like, Sonny you're so deep in the weeds, man. Like, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I couldn't do all that. So big ups to you, man.
No, I had fun with it. And, again, continue to support Cody. He was one of my first friends when I got into this whole industry. And, he shows up on Locked On Illini. I show up on this show. And, it's a continued success. It's nice having someone that you kind of grow with on this journey. So we'd love to have you over at Locked On Illini. Like Cody said, I produce content every single day. We're recording this on March 3rd. There's been a new video every single day this calendar year of 2025 on the channel. So I'm grinding it out because the channel continues to grow, and that's just because of the awesome support that we get. A lot of those supporters are in the chat here, so big shout out to all of you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to say I will be live shortly after the game Friday. I will be in Arizona in a hotel room, but I will be live Friday from Arizona at Cubs spring training Friday night when I'm done with everything, because I will have watched the game in my hotel room, and I will probably be way too excited, more excited than anyone else in the general area when Illinois beats Purdue. So I will be live Friday night here on this YouTube channel at some point after they hopefully win. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button here on this YouTube channel, on this YouTube video. And I appreciate y'all's support as always. So yeah. And if that does not actually work out, for sure on Saturdays at some point. So I have to say it, just have to, but I have a crazy, crazy life. But anyway, I will see you all then. Let's enjoy this win this week because I love these types of vibes. It's nice to be back in them. We haven't had them in a while. So until Friday, my friends, ILL.
I and I.